I'm not going to tell you any lie. I'm not going to bullshit you. I don't feel like working out right now. I just don't feel like it. I'm out of the groove, and it's just so nice not to work out. I know that sounds odd, but you have to understand, man. I've been doing this. I've been grinding and banging these weights all my life, man. It seems like all my life. I've lived like a few lives in this one lifetime here, I think, by now, at 55, going on 56. And, when I was young, it was easy. When I really had a goal in mind, when I had a kid to try and do the best I could for, that depended on me, I pushed harder, pressed harder, a number of reasons, because it affected, I don't know, I used to think, I'm going to tell you the reality about appearances and reality. I'm going to tell you what the real deal is with that relationship there, or is there any relationship at all. You never can tell. That's pretty much what it is. You never can tell. You never can tell. I think it's just experience and just energy pick up off of people, certain things you might key in on about a person's posture or whatever that might be a giveaway to others that have shared similar experiences that person probably has been down similar paths. But when I was young and I first learned how to defend myself, when I learned how to fight, and I got really good at it because I was obsessed with it. Fear is a hell of a motivator. Knowing that that's believing wholeheartedly at the time. I was wrong, but believing wholeheartedly at the time, nonetheless, even if you believe in something that's not exactly completely true, the belief in itself is what's going to drive you. So it's the same either way as if it were 100% true. If you believe it is, then it's just as good. And when I was a kid, and I was bullied, and I got picked on, and I felt frail and appeared frail to everybody that looked at me, I wanted to be able to take care of myself and defend myself, learn how to fight. I didn't want to have to be afraid. So, I had scoliosis pretty bad. I had leg braces when I was born. I was paralyzed from the waist down. And as my spine began to straighten, first they put your legs in a jig and then they cast them to hold them that way in certain positions. And then it went to the leg braces, like the Forrest Gump thing, with the shoes, and they adjust it in degrees, lock it in place. But even after I could, stand and run, I'm not saying I was the fastest, but even then, I still, I got picked on, I got tormented. I was a year progressed in grade, and I was small for my age. So that left me like doubly smaller than kids that were in my immediate peer group, in my class. And even in the neighborhood, I felt vulnerable. And actually, I felt angry about it because I really didn't do anything to anybody. I didn't bother anybody. I just wanted to be, born into the world, and you just, why can't I go here or go there? Why can't I ride my bike? Or why can't I, without being, bothered or pressured or targeted? Or why can't you just be, not out there trying to instigate trouble or carrying a chip on my shoulder or anything like that. It's the farthest thing from my mind at that time. I'm just trying to live my life, man, and just enjoy what was my childhood. And so when I realized it was inevitable, it seemed the only way out for me was to learn how to defend myself, learn how to fight. And I saw the stuff on TV back then in the 60s was like the Batman TV show with Adam West and Burt Ward. Corny as it was, still, you have to remember that at a period of time, TV wasn't that graphic. Things weren't that graphic. We weren't by any means as desensitized as we are today. Blood didn't even look real. Blood looked like bright red house paint half the time, right? But it still gave you the effect. It was all you needed. Your imagination could do the rest and fill in the blanks. Today, they leave nothing basically to your imagination. I don't know if that's an improvement or not. I think it's a regression. But so I would see like Batman and Robin, they would fight. It was corny, of course, but they would fight all these thugs and these gangs of bad guys, and they came out triumphant all the time. And the reason that they came out triumphant all the time was twofold. It was a two-pronged thing. Number one, they were in the right, and good triumphed over evil. Good was better than bad. That's one reason they're going to win. And then the other reason was that they were skilled tacticians. They weren't necessarily bigger, but they were in shape, supposedly, according to the storyline. They were fit, they were in shape, and they knew how to fight. And even if to the viewer, we didn't know the difference. We weren't an educated audience. I didn't know anything about technicalities of the fight game or anything, so it was believable, when he chopped somebody with the famous karate chop type of thing or something. Everybody knew that would knock somebody out, That's what we thought back then, because we were ignorant to anything else. It was an innocent time. And then when I saw The Green Hornet, where Bruce Lee played Kato, the driver, he was just a supporting role guy. He was the sidekick. He wasn't even the leading man. But he was, because he was Asian, and of course you have to remember the period of time here in the USA, to see him on the television set in such a visible, role, there was a mystique about him. There were a lot of unanswered questions because we really weren't an educated audience. We weren't that diverse. We didn't know. So all the stereotypes and things, he's from Asia, so surely he has some kind of mystical martial arts capability that we can't comprehend or understand. It's innate in him. And he did have this ability, but it's not because he was just Asian. It plays into it, though. At the time, he grew up in a different culture back then. So it certainly plays into it. Much more was available to him as far as training at that period of time. Tai Chi and the like, there was, fitness has always been tied to a almost martial type of thing. Look at the history of some of the Orient. Anyway, he would just dispatch rooms full of bad guys. And of course, Bruce Lee was a very accomplished combatant, but it didn't make any difference. The point was, he looked more superfluous and more flowery techniques and things and stuff that actually he went on to later say, well, that's not really most practical. In an actual combat situation, he relied more on more simplistic, straightforward techniques, but nonetheless, he was still super fast, et cetera, et cetera. He knew how to generate power. But to watch that, it was beautiful. He was very elegant. And to see the way that he could handle all these roomfuls of bad guys, because again, he was smaller too. He was more diminutive in size compared to them. So size had nothing to do with it. It was all technical ability and skill and training, conditioning. So when I saw that, I thought, man, if I could only learn some of what these knowledgeable individuals had, then I could defend myself, because that's my only way out. I'm a small guy, scrawny, weak. I guess that this is what the world is. If you're small, you're scrawny, and you're weak, you'll be preyed upon, unless you possess this esoteric knowledge of the fight game or this martial type of training. So of course, I just luckily fell in with good people, and that was like 1,000,000 to 1 odds that would be just so conveniently placed that I could just stumble across it. And they didn't even want to take me in there. You have to understand, a lot of these guys were recently having returned from Vietnam and stuff. They were different focus and mentality, and that's kind of what attracted me to it, the way that they train. Not like today. Nothing like today. If you walked in the average dojo, not like what you would see today. And just watching, I was hypnotized, and I wanted that. And I was introverted, quiet, shy. You know, I walked around looking at the sidewalk, counting the cracks. I couldn't look anybody in the face or the eyes. I was subservient. But I got to sit and watch. So I would go down there every, 2 times a week, 2 nights a week, I would go and just sit and watch. And they allowed me to do that because they kind of had to, because they were occupying a space. They were using a space that belonged to the local Salvation Army Boys Club. So it was part and parcel of the community, for the community. So they had to let me come in and watch. But they didn't want me there. There were no kids there, no children there. And they would run me off sometimes. They let me watch for like an hour, and then the second hour I couldn't hang out or whatever. Of course, the doctors always repeatedly said I'd go back for like these quarterly, and then it became, every 6 months. I would go back for these checkups where they measure the progression of my spine, how many degrees has it straightened up and whatnot, and do we need to go with the back brace, which I fortunately was able to duck, but I was always terrified of that back brace. Kept me up at night, when I would get ready to go to another one of these checkups to see, am I going to get the back brace, the dreaded back brace? I'm already a social pariah. That's all I need. Or they screw the shit in your head and all that stuff. It was all a fucked up thing. I don't know. I don't even remember. I never had one, so I don't know if they screwed that shit in your head or not. It was like a halo thing, and I don't know. Anyway, I didn't have to wear it, luckily. I didn't get that. But every time I would go back, I would want my mom to ask, because, of course, I'm not bold enough to ask myself or speak for myself. I don't have my own voice. I would have my mom. I would bug her on the way up and ask her, not really high pressure, because it's not me. It wasn't me then. And she would ask, oh, and Dr. Jimmy wanted to know again if he could, he's been going down watching this karate school, and he would like to know, oh, absolutely not. He can't do any of that kind of contact thing. He's unable to do that. He can't do that. So for about almost 2 years, I just observed. Almost 2 years, but I didn't go away, so they got used to me hanging around. And then, and I tried to teach myself. I tried to learn. I got these little paperback books when I could get one, somebody to buy me one. And, I tried to learn these techniques, and really didn't work out very well like that. But eventually, my mom went and asked again, and the doctor said, I'm sitting right there. He speaks as if I'm not even in the room. Says to her, well, you know what? He's not going to let this go. I mean, you've asked me about this a number of times now, the past 2 years. He's, very persistent. Go ahead and let him try it. He's not going to be able to do it, but the only way he's going to find that out is let him do it and fail for himself, and then, it'll be out of his system. So I was like elated to hear that. And I also felt a little bitterness, a little twinge of that toward this guy for speaking as if, I'm a non-entity, even though I'm sitting right there. That was very degrading to me, dehumanizing. Even at that age, I could sense that. But nonetheless, he gave me the green light. And then I went and I joined. And and initially still, they really didn't want me around that much. I mean, I was kind of using up time, taking away time for instruction and things, because I didn't know anything. I was a beginner, And these guys were all much worlds more accomplished. So they didn't need to be slowed down. They were there actually to utilize the space and to train. They really weren't trying to bring a whole lot of new people in from the community. It wasn't like they had flyers or anything. I just stumbled across this quiet little club, which is eventually why they pretty much lost that space. But that was later. But since I stayed, and I went through and I endured, and they were hard on me because, like I said, it really didn't matter much to them if I left. It was probably for the best, I guess, in some ways they would have thought. But I stayed. And not long after, they had to switch locations and find another place where they could be allowed to utilize space and train. And I followed there. And I continued, and I stayed, and I trained for, I don't know, who knows how long, but I know those, even just the first few years, I trained for like 18 years, 19 years, nonstop without a break. But when I first started, the first whole year, this was my way out. This was a necessity for me. It wasn't a hobby. It was something that I felt that I had to do. So I would practice 6 hours, 5, 6 hours every single day. I mean, hard. Wear myself out, on a bag outside in the backyard, hanging from a pole. And I couldn't afford a bag, so I had a duffel bag with sand in the bottom, keeping it from swinging and sawdust in it. And I would be out there 24/7. And of course, we trained 2 hours a night, for, formally, 2 nights a week. So when I actually was becoming a fairly accomplished fighter, especially at that age for a kid, my peer group, other kids, bigger than me, but still kids, how much fight experience do you have at that age if you don't train or, haven't had any instruction? And then I got into it with the neighborhood bully who had chased me around for a long time. And usually I could get away, but this time I wasn't trying to get away. And I mouthed off at him. It was an incident, and he popped off at the mouth. And rather than shrinking away like I usually did, I popped off back, and then that was it. And I thought, what am I doing? I was like terrified. Why couldn't I keep my mouth shut? And he started walking towards me, telling me what he was going to do to me. And his arm reared back to hit me, and then it was like a different dimension or something. Everything was in slow motion, literally, not figuratively. It looked like that to me from my perspective. It looked like he was going like this wide haymaker way out here, coming from way out there. Very slowly. I know that I had time I was in awe, and I was like, wow, he's trying to punch me. I guess I should block that. So I blocked it, I hit him, I kicked him, and it was on. He was stronger than me, he was bigger than me. We ended up on the ground, as many fights do, but, I did what I had to do. Actually, hurt him pretty good. And his father, it was a big, huge, to-do about it. His dad came over to our house, and he had spoken on the phone. He wanted to come over and talk to my parents, and they were upset with me. They were like, Jimmy, I knew that karate bullshit was going to get you into trouble and blah, 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 blah. Thanks for the vote of confidence. But he was talking about he was going to sue and all this shit. Nobody sued anybody back then. It was unheard of. So that was like, what? Somebody's going to sue? Oh, my God. And he came over to the house. And when he came over, I was banished to the bedroom until he got there. When they came over, I was terrified. I was shaking. My knees were rattling. And I heard him greet him. They let him in, and then I hear him yell for me, Jimmy, come out here. So I come out there, and the guy looks up, the bully's father, and he says, wait a minute, this is James? This is the kid that got into a fight with my son? My dad said, yeah. This is my youngest boy, Jimmy. The guy looked at me, and he was like, looked me up and down, and he said, I'm sorry, never mind. And he walked away. He turned around. That was it. And we all stood there like, what? Even my parents. And he turned around, and he left. Never a word again about it from him. So I don't know if it was that he realized his son was a bully, and he knew his son was a bully, and that he saw me and he thought, wow, my kid was picking on this diminutive, small, frail-looking guy, and this kid got lucky or whatever. I don't know if it was that, or if he himself was a bully and treated his kid that way, and that's why the kid grew up like that, or was growing up like that, and maybe it was shame he felt. That he looked at me and thought, my God, this scrawny little nobody beat my son's ass that badly. Either way, it worked out. And from there it was on. I trained like that, and in that my life, my little kid life in the neighborhood changed. From that moment, from that fight at the playground. My life just changed completely. Like when I went back outside, because I was punished. I couldn't go anywhere immediately after the fight. When I returned outside, it was like night and day. I didn't expect that. I thought I had just fended off somebody that wanted to do me harm. They didn't get to do me harm, and I didn't have to try and run. I didn't realize what a dramatic change it would make socially, and it really did. It opened a whole new world up for me. People treated me different. They regarded me differently. Of course, this kid's little sister, I kind of liked her. She might have liked me, but she was there when I beat her brother up, and then she never spoke to me again, never even looked at me. So that was the trade-off. But, people regarded me different from then on, because everybody had been there. It was in the middle of a wiffle ball game, so everybody had been there and seen it. And it changed everything. So I continued to train harder and harder and harder, and I continued to have challenges. And as I got older, even into high school and things, I got into more fights with similar results. And pretty soon it got to be bullies weren't, it wasn't like I was going out getting in a fight with quite decent kids. These were people that came looking for trouble, that picked on kids. So then I got to the point where, I'm getting ahead of myself. It got to be that people knew of this reputation I was developing or had developed, or these things I had demonstrated. So nobody picked on me anymore, because they all knew who I was. Small community, small pond. But I didn't look threatening. You understand what I'm saying? I didn't know at the time if I did or I didn't, but looking back, of course, I didn't look very threatening. I was wiry, I was lean, I had abs. I had abs when I was 13, 14 years old and didn't even know what in the hell they were. Had ribs and abs. But, later I started to get into more fights. And it wasn't because people were messing with me, it was because I would go places, and if there was somebody there that was clearly trying to make other people uncomfortable or miserable, or they were picking on somebody or whatever, I always inserted myself into the situation. I just had no tolerance for it, and it got out of hand for a while, for a good while. And then I started working a little bit, and I gained some size, and I continued to do both. I taught eventually. I taught, and I worked out a little, not a lot. I didn't know what the hell I was doing. Then I decided to start getting into the working out because I was making progress, and I was like, wow, I'm actually looking different. The fight game was old hat. It wasn't like, I was already really, really, really competent. So it wasn't like anything new. It wasn't like I'm going to become such a better fighter next year than I am this year. You know what I'm saying? And I didn't have any real competitive aspirations. The only reason I ever fought competitively was opportunity to legally fight, opportunity to fight without getting in trouble, an opportunity to fight people from other backgrounds, from other disciplines and stuff, that kind of thing. And I got in a fight with all kinds of people. I got in a fight with, on the street with wrestlers and things. I'm not going to sit here and recount all this shit because it just sounds like I'm just boasting now. But I'm not boasting because that's not me today. I mean, me probably, I hate to say it, but me at, 17, 18, 19, 20, 21, 22, 23 would, if not trounce, me today, would probably give me today a really, really, really miserable time in a fight. Even though I would have been so much smaller then, just because I was this on top of my game. I was, well trained and practiced. But the bodybuilding thing, the muscle thing, gaining some muscle and looking better, filling out, that was new. So I made some progress, and I did both up until I got to about pounds, and at like 170 pounds, it just seemed like I couldn't get any bigger. I didn't intend to get bigger. I thought when I was 160, I was big. You know what I mean? When I got to 160, I thought, oh, I'm big now. Surely everybody can see I'm, clearly a bodybuilder. You know what I mean? But because I had always been so small, so scrawny, skinny. But I made it to 170, because my dieting got a little better. It still was shitty. I didn't know what I was doing, but it got better. I learned enough, I knew to eat more. And I wanted more. It's addicting. It's addictive, so I decided, the only way I'm going to see how much muscle I can put on is if I get rid of this fighting thing, because the teaching and the training and all, it's too aerobic. I'm expending too many calories. I knew that. I didn't know I could eat to compensate enough. It's not like I had a huge appetite. It was still pretty thin, 170. But I followed up to 170, and then I put that to the side so that I could continue to get bigger. So eventually, as a single dad, it was my job to be, deterrence, to provide deterrence in a ever increasingly more violent and bad world, society. People can't tell me that it's not worse. I grew up and I've seen it. I've lived in both. I've lived in society, 40 years ago and today, and I can tell you that it's different. Now, around here, it's more of an old school feel, but closer to the cities or out surrounding around the cities, it's different. In the cities, it's different. Sorry, but it is. So yeah, it was nice to be, a huge monstrous guy on a crazy motorcycle, and when I would drop my daughter off at her grandmother's or something, people would see me and I'd mug them and stuff, because if they're looking at me or looking at her, I'm definitely going to look back, because I want them to think, well, Jesus Christ, if I'm going to go bother somebody, it's not going to be that little girl. You know what I'm saying? So that was my job, man, part of my job. But the whole point is, you can't really judge a book by its cover. It's actually, you probably would have wanted less to do with fighting with me when I was younger and skinnier than you would have when I got bigger and was older. And of course your approach changes. The way you fight changes. When you're really small, I fought from the side a lot. I'd have to sidestep and take people from the side, or, take them from the side and stuff. I couldn't bang head on the same way. Not at all. I mean, yeah, sure, some, but not at all. Not like steamroll. Once I got bigger and heavier, things changed. Some of the techniques that worked completely like perfect for me earlier, they didn't work so well anymore, because it was a different body I'm working with, So it changed. And some of the things that were not strong in fight game for me when I was smaller, the banging head on shit, now I could bang on like a steamroller. So it changed. I'd say my technique from outward observation certainly wasn't as pretty, or you wouldn't appreciate the technicality of it as much, later when I got bigger, as you would have if you'd have seen me younger and thinner and more elegant. Anyway, so I'm trying to find motivation to go out into the garage in the cold today and light the heater up out there and lift. We'll see if it happens.